Star Fox, a series and fanbase that is constantly crying out for a new game in the series. It is a shame a few of those games are duds in certain aspects, and, in my opinion, nothing has unseated Lilac Wars from the throne yet. A lot of these ideas in the video are actually taken inspiration from the fantastic post on Reddit by user EMI Black Ace. I have left the link in the description for the original post. Now, before we discuss the improvements I'd make to the series, in some theoretical Switch game, it's beneficial to look at each game and what they did well and established in the previous series. So, Star Fox on SNES, or Star Wing in Europe, established the classic on-rail shooter formula that works so well. Your R-Wing flies down the corridor and you have to move by pointing your laser reticule to either side, up or down, in order to both aim and move your ship to avoid obstacles and attack, and counter with your own fire. You can tilt the R-Wing to each side to fit through tight gaps, and to move to the side quicker for speedy maneuvers. You can also speed up or slow down your ship for a short period for some extra movement options. Along each level there are certain power-ups that you can use to improve your ship. Laser upgrades for more damage and larger attack areas, big bombs to destroy nearly everything on screen, shields to block the next damage, lives, health drops, and also ship repairs to fix broken wings. The final interesting idea is that you can choose 3 routes with different stages in a hard, medium, and easy difficulty run, each area being different and ending in a unique boss, with 2 bonus stages if you complete certain requirements. Star Fox 64, or Lilac Wars in Europe, improved upon almost everything from the original, with Star Fox 2 being essentially dismantled and made again for a release on the N64. It's kind of difficult to count Star Fox 2 as a separate release because of its weird history, but anyway, the first thing you'll notice in this game is the voice acting and the story.
Whoa! Help me!
Instead of a couple of text boxes, each character is conveyed with a different personality far more strongly, and the story and context of each mission holds more weight than the obstacle courses of the original. This means you can have more dynamic missions than just shoot the bad guy, kill the bad guy, and it gives the villains more of a personality. The biggest improvement from the original is certainly all ranged mode, where instead of corridor levels, sometimes you have an open area for full 3D movement and dogfights that aren't on rail. This leads to additional movement options such as the backwards somersault and the U-turn, which are used in really great missions that fully utilise the power of the N64, with some amazing dogfights with Star Wolf. Huge missions to defeat hordes of enemies and the boss at the end of a corridor, now having the ability to be in all ranged mode as a final boss. I remember a fantastic mission where you have to destroy all the enemies that are pouring out of the base in a massive dogfight with so many enemies on screen, whilst also focusing on taking down the mothership slowly coming towards the centre of the stage. This game also introduced the barrel roll, which avoids mass laser fire and the charging of the standard laser for a homing blast. Finally, instead of the standard 3 routes in the game based on difficulty, it does something much better. Each route is linked on the criteria you complete in each area, which means you have far more interesting and different routes you can take based on how well you've played in the previous areas. And it gives each area a fun hidden objective. Now, Star Fox Adventures is kind of difficult to draw from since it reworked from a game called Dinosaur Planet and shares very few similarities with past games, so I'm not really going to talk about it. Star Fox Assault is interesting as it scraps the multiple routes for a linear story and splits the gameplay between standard corridor R-Wing segments and on-foot / landmaster segments, which kind of act as strange non-linear segments where it's not about getting to the end or defeating the enemy, it's about finding an objective on a map and going to it to defeat it, which, I mean, you know, these non-linear segments could be quite good as you swap between ground, landmaster and R-Wing in tactical maneuvers in order to, you get different vantage points, different gameplay mechanics, and you can do different things in each of them. So it does add to the variety, but the problem is that the gameplay in these 3D areas have a very similar control scheme to how you would control in a corridor segment, so it leads to kind of frustrating and uncomfortable bits of gameplay. Star Fox Command on the DS goes back to traditional on-rail shooter gameplay, with more interesting switches in the mechanics. An area is divided into segments where you need to drag icons over a hidden map to find enemies and enemy bases in a certain amount of moves, which then results in an all-range mode dogfight with an objective or a boss. Strange, but I feel all of these games, while trying something new, certainly have interesting ideas, but poor execution. Star Fox Zero, it tried to improve the controls, but didn't do it well. It tried moving the R-wing with the joystick, but the reticle with the gyro controls, which works in theory, but it's really awkward using two screens in practice. I believe this could potentially be far more intuitive using the pointer, similar to how Pikmin 3 improved their gameplay. Where you have everything on one screen to concentrate on, you are constantly switching between both and getting disorientated with two screens quite quickly. Yet with pointer controls, you can use the joystick to move the R-wing and the pointer to aim where you shoot, which would be far more comfortable for the player. Star Fox Zero did make non-corridor segments more interesting and closer to how they should be, but it's difficult to tell with the controls as it's far more bare bones than previous games without too much in terms of replayability, such as using the drone to go inside enemy ships to fight in areas where you're not constantly moving forward or backwards. It's nice, it's a nice change of pace. So moving on to the game idea I had in mind, which was inspired by EMI Black Ace, with a great idea describing the plot mechanics of a theoretical game called Star Fox Mercenaries. And my theme for this game will be replayability. I feel this game should mechanically be closest to Lilac Wars or Zero in certain aspects. I will have missions and routings consisting of classic Star Fox corridor levels followed by a boss or a big all-range boss mode. But some missions could be similar to the Zero Walker or drone segments if they fix the controls to make them feel natural. These controls will also be quite separate from the on-rail shooting controls, as it's a different type of gameplay, so it needs to feel natural when you play it. The base controls should be very similar to Lilac Wars, and certainly have an option for classic controls and using motion controls, which are the pointer. The new features I would like to add are customization options on the R-wing. Instead of the basic laser, gold ring and bomb upgrades you get during a mission, you have multiple types of laser upgrades. Perhaps holding down the charge built up a barrier to protect you from small damage, or it builds up a barrage of laser blasts instead of a homing blast. The basic laser shots are more guided than they are. Lasers curve, bombs are weaker but quicker to shoot. A charge shot can be charged for longer for a far bigger and more powerful shot. A railgun at the expense of movement options. I believe being able to kit out the R-wing between missions in the Great Fox would make sense. Perhaps it would be better to have a major upgrade at the end of each mission. And using the points you accumulate after defeating enemies could be used as a currency in a shop, similar to how roguelikes work. So these upgrades will all be random after defeating a boss, such as the type of gun at the front, the HP or the passive abilities perhaps. Obviously the mechanics and the plot should make general thematic sense. So, the story follows that the Lilac system is under threat once more. The attacks seem precise and calculated in taking over major points of the system with very minimal casualties to the enemies. These attacks are catastrophic, and so the legendary team pilots who have saved the system multiple times in the past are called into action. But it's just Fox and Slippy to start with. The other characters like Falco, Cat, Peppy and Bill will be introduced later. Through the story and levels, you eventually discover the enemy has a time travel device working similarly to Live, Die, Repeat, where they can reset the universe and erase the time. Each of the main pilots should be doing their own thing in the missions and have different stories that merge together at the end. So, once you finish your first run and defeat the main villain, they will hit the reset button, knowing that his forces were defeated by you, and he will use this knowledge to tinker with how he plays. Complete domination will be inevitable, but he's made a vital mistake. In the last minute, for some reason, maybe you shoot the device or some sort of time, whatever your special, you keep your memory and you know that you can do better. The key difference with each run is that the enemy placements and amounts are random each run. whereas the structure of the level stays the same. The second ending will be after you complete a second run of the main story, where you finally reach the main villain and he'll show off he has a new final boss. And once defeating this final boss, you think, great, all is great, you've secured the time reset device, the system is saved. Yet, unbeknownst to you, the main villain was stalling and has unleashed the master weapon, which has wiped out the entire Lilat system, and thus you need to reset in order to stop this from coming to pass. So, the third ending will be that you've completed your route with all of the main objectives complete, and you defeat the main villain and the master weapon at the end, and manage to stop the invasion coming to pass. But you know it wasn't perfect. People have suffered, many of the secrets and mysteries remain unsolved, so Fox hits the reset button again to find out who's really pulling the strings in the shadows. The fourth ending will be the perfect run. You've completed all main objectives on each sector, and you've also completed a run with each character and completed their secrets. Finally, you're treated to the secret final boss against Andros. Of course it is. All is well in the galaxy, you crush the device, breaking people free of the infinite time loop, and the story closes. Thank you, Star Fox. Keeping with tradition, the map should be similar, with starting at Corneria and ending at somewhere like Venom. But I feel a lot of the planets and locales in the series are extremely samey, and they constantly get reused between games, so let's mix it up a bit. I think instead of the asteroid field level, we should do an underwater volcano which is spitting out chunks of bedrock to avoid. A level full of gases spewing out from the hot springs that explode and damage you if fired upon. A forest area with apes swinging through the trees, but you feel yourself being stalked the whole time, and you have to stop them from damaging you by hitting them enough as they swing past you. A space area with black holes that mess with your movement options. A whole area that is a robot boss that you have to defeat from the inside as a drone. A desert area that starts with a corridor level. Next you have an all-range mode inside the secret base where you find the boss. But this isn't the end. The boss will escape and you'll have another corridor area where you have to avoid obstacles and defeat the boss. I'm surprised they haven't done a whole level where you're fighting on the surface of a Death Star. You fly into the centre and blow it up while escaping to fight off the remnants. I know Venom's quite similar to this in Star Fox 64, but it doesn't really follow that structure since it's about the confrontation with Andros. How about a planet in a snowstorm where heavy winds affect how easy it is to control the R-Wing, and the enemies are kind of obscured, and perhaps maybe even some of them aren't enemies at all. I love the bizarre slot machine boss as well, so perhaps a drone level inside a countryside supercomputer which has some trippy visuals. These are just a couple of the ideas off the top of my head. It's space, you can do what you want. EMI Blackace lists out his idea on how the missions will go down, with the mission plan being the primary goal, the backup plan, and the last-ditch effort on how the mission could dynamically change throughout. I'll put this in context. Take the train mission from Lilat Wars as an example, with hitting each switch being the primary objective. It will stop the train and complete the mission. Upon failing this and missing a switch, you go back to destroying the train, which would be the backup mission, and you have to defeat the boss, which comes out of the train. And upon failing to destroy the train in time, you will fight a separate boss on a glider, which will be the last ditch effort. You haven't properly saved everything, there will be damage incurred, but you've defeated the boss. Another example being following a drill going underground. If it isn't reached in time and defeated, then the battle switches to an all-range mode inside the planet's core, where there will be a lot of enemies you'll have to defeat. The drill will transform into a robot which you'll have to defeat at the same time. If you cannot defeat the robot before it is drilled into the planet's magma, then you will incur a final boss, but the planet will be, unfortunately, destroyed. That will be a similar structure to how a lot of the missions could go down, but that's not necessarily always going to be how the mission will go. Perhaps one will be like in the asteroid field, where you have to hit each ring to get to the secret area. You know, there could be secrets still that are outside of the objectives. Now, these missions should be very tough, and perhaps some information withheld until multiple runs are done, and you get more insight from the story, so that most players will get a bad-ish ending first. This thematically makes sense, so that the time travel reveal would work and encourage replayability and improving your runs, whilst also promising new content if they do. You could also have a style rating on how many enemies you've defeated, which then obviously gives you more money. How quick you beat a mission, how little damage you took, etc. These all contribute. I believe since the whole structure of the game is more like runs in a roguelike, there should be a slightly harder difficulty overall. It will be the hardest until you fail the primary goal, when the difficulty will drop to the next goal in the backup mission, and then finally back down to a slightly easier difficulty in the last ditch effort. The main goal is to get the players to see all the new content whilst improving their skills, so it can't be like so difficult that it becomes almost off-putting to play at such a high level. It's just quite hard. The sense of satisfaction in completing a run is great, but still, this isn't a true roguelike. Perhaps doing a run will unlock either Falco, Cat or Peppy, who all have their own unique attributes and secret areas they can access. For example, Falco's ship would be faster and his main weapon focusing more on precise sniper shots. Peppy would be more of an explosives man with far more strength and flying techniques like U-turn or barrel roll. Cat could be the nimblest ship of all with more of a focus on manoeuvrability. And Slippy could be quite weak but can hack units to become drones that will have lots of smaller attacks to protect him, with Slippy being unlocked from the start. These could all be with passive elements that would vary in the missions. For example, Falco is far more perceptive and quick, so he would be able to take different routes by locking onto certain enemies and engaging in chases, or being able to catch up with enemy ships. Slippy can scan areas for hidden routes, Peppy can smash his way through walls and find secret areas, Cat can pose as a spy to hack into enemy frequencies to find out info on what to do. Fox would be the famous leader, so enemies notice him earlier and will change plans, or friendlies will help him to open up new areas. These mean that each run is different and have different variances on each planet. So even though there are multiple routes to take, you can have unique experiences in each of these routes based on your character of choice. Each part of the story coming together from each perspective for the true ending in saving the day and beating Andros. The main mechanic I'm not sure how to incorporate is the other types of vehicles. The Landmaster, the submarine and the drone are all quite unique, yet there would be a lot of confusion along the paths with the combination of upgrades. For example, having multiple laser upgrades and then switching to a level with the submarine, which has a different kind of gameplay feel, would be kind of confusing and be difficult to program. So my idea is that they're limited to a passive ability for certain characters, the Landmaster being only usable by Peppy. Slippy can only use the drone, Cat can only use the submarine. These could be their abilities, which could also mean they have areas that only they could access. These characters also have to have the use of the R-Wing, as assuming Peppy has only got the Landmaster, that means he's only limited to planets and missions where you could traverse the terrain. No underwater planets, no aerial planets, no space segments. Similarly with the submarine, hard to get that many underwater areas. So, planets like Aquas are only uniquely accessible by Cat. In regards to the upgrades, the submarine will be similar to Cat's ship, the Landmaster will be similar to Peppy's ship. So the upgrades will be able to be transferred quite easily. Slippy is a different barrel of fish. He can be a completely unique type of run compared to Fox, where the gameplay is different, similar to Zero where you just fly around 3D space without constantly being propelled forward. Not necessarily his missions will be collectathons or plonked into a map you have to fly and eliminate 4 targets scattered across the map, perhaps more puzzle elements, dungeons where you have to solve certain areas to get to the final boss, you have to open pass with a key, and you know, like just a totally different style of gameplay for Slippy, as his story is almost in parallel to Fox, where he hacks things and helps Fox on his missions, whilst Fox fights the big bads with his ship. Overall, my vision is a game that focuses on the replayability, different planets, different characters, the different ship upgrade combos, the different routes that focus on new content to find. With this focus on a new style of gameplay and new content, would really take the Star Fox series out of the shadow and back into the limelight of being a major series. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I usually don't do these sort of voice bits after the video, but I thought I'd do it just to link to a couple of my mates' YouTube channels. All of the channels below have a link in the description and have all appeared on the Orange Juice cast before. So with Optosu, who tends to do arrangements of different game songs, We have Matt with Football 434 who does in-depth analysis on different aspects of football. And we have Jezzo Show, who's just done a review of Mario Pinball. Also, if any of you have any ideas on any series you'd like me to do a how to improve video on, please ping me a message. Honestly, I'll listen to anything. Okay, have fun guys, bye!